once again, like discussing or looking at into issues that we are doing in our research process. Today morning when Yodita came to me, he said, why don't you come and share some of the understandings for the senior research scholars, some or even assistant professors from various universities across India. On behalf of Sikkim University, we welcome you once again for this very important and unique workshop. I must congratulate the organizer and her team for continuously making things good for all the participants here. I'm very much sure that at the end of this workshop you will be pregnant with all these ideas when you go back and do your own research and refine your own study in your chosen area. I would like to discuss on the very fundamental aspects of what are the philosophical foundations of when we take up a research study. You have been studying at various levels, starting from master's course and then your MPhil program, and then of course you're also doing your PhD. Some of you are in the verge of submitting your thesis, some already have submitted your thesis, but nevertheless, reiterating or understanding these base, mostly what we call the philosophical base of the problematic social science research goes a long way. It never goes waste. You may ask yourself what is the need of again going back and looking at things when we are already in the halfway stage with our research. We already found what we wanted to find. These things are always there. But this base gives us the entire research process, starting from selecting a problem, then how do you collect the data, how do you analyze in terms of designing your research study, then going into the field, the way you collect data, the methods of collecting data. Once you collect data, how do you analyze the data, and how do you interpret the data, and how do you present the data. So it's like a backbone, but you cannot see all these things. We simply go with says that, okay, what is your research topic, what is your hypothesis, what are your research questions, what is your design, what is your theoretical background and the data collection methods and interpretation. But behind all these things, there is something which we have to know and discover and get more into these things is the philosophical base, or sometimes, as Dr. Yodita has already put up in the beginning of the sessions, is the epistemological base. Why this epistemological base is important particularly in social science research? This epistemological base is not that problematic in pure sciences, or rather what we call the natural sciences. Why it has been bothering us from time to time? And again, if you ask me then why to revisit again these philosophical traditions or philosophical understandings of social science research? Every time, though there is a corpus of knowledge on the various philosophical approaches of understanding knowledge and its corollaries, but still there is always a scope to re-look into, so that the more we go into deeper, the more insights it emerges into the nature of social phenomena that is under investigation. We all know that the differences between this social science research and this natural science research, and fundamentally it is being divided into two aspects. One is the whole positivist understanding or positivism of looking at things, of gaining knowledge or obtaining knowledge of the entire both the natural phenomena and as well as the social phenomena. On the other hand, we have this social science research, which basically comes down to what we call it as the interpretivist way of looking at things. Objectively, we cannot, looking to measure a rock or measure the height and weight of particular things. There lies fundamentally how do we distinguish these two. In that sense, a lot of critique is there that the entire social science research is not objective. It is fundamentally, basically interpretive. Whatever the researcher brings to the readers or brings to the world, it is basically that you interpreted this whole world. And people question what methods that you use, how did you arrive to this knowledge, how did you gather this knowledge. There are certain, all this is, and they say this is all rubbish. Social science research doesn't stand for the acute, accurate predictions, like in pure sciences, like in physics or mathematics, absolutes. 2 into 2 is equal to 4. There is no other ways of no theory behind 2 into 2, 4. But why in psychology you have 2000 theories of one singular phenomena, and sociology you have like 10,000 theories, in management you have theories, in economics you have hundreds and hundreds of theories. Sociology, education, you have educationists interpret the whole educational processing in their own ways of looking at the same phenomena. Why this is the problem? That is the whole concern of social science pursuit of knowledge. But this is not a problematic in natural sciences. You go with certain things, you come out with, and they say this is absolute, and there is no challenge towards it. For example, any social phenomena that is under investigation, be it the educational process of communities in Sikkim, or be it the attitudes of people, or the managerial practices in different communities, or in different societies, or the way people deal conflict management. Conflict has been, scholars are here in peace and conflict management. Why they have so many theories in discussing one single phenomenon of conflict? Or why do they say peace is into 100 theories? So you need to understand that this whole division of pure sciences and social sciences. But does that mean that our research is waste? Our research doesn't stand for any kind of proof and validity? In that sense, it all started with this whole sociological imagination of social science research with Max Weber, which he says that, Max Weber is also called it as a methodological individualist. How to understand social phenomena? You are researching for your MPhil, PhD, and post PhD. You have your own topics, but fundamentally, you are looking only the social phenomena, or what we call the cultural phenomena, in different subjects, be it economics or be it management, psychology, anthropology, or education. It is inherently the social phenomena. Social phenomena which is occurring in a given social context, in a particular social reality. So how to understand this social reality, which is very, very challenging, and what instruments that you have to understand this social reality, how to grasp this social reality in a given social vacuum. What instruments you have, like in chemistry or zoology, you have certain instruments. What are your tools, techniques to unravel this whole complex phenomena which is multi-layered, which you cannot describe in one single aspect? This is the most challenging thing for social sciences. So in that sense, we are more theoretically, methodologically equipped than the physical sciences. So I argue in that way. I disagree that, though we don't have a laboratory with the fixed instruments, we have certain things, and at the end of the day we say that, okay, this is what we found out. Not necessary. These social phenomena can also be put in the most objective way. But how to do that? So philosophy of social research methods gives a direction and a way to look into certain things which are complex in nature. So Weberian understanding of social phenomena starts with that to understand a society or to understand a social phenomena under investigation, it is not possible to at a collective level. One has to come down to an individual actor. How one particular individual actor or a person acts in a particular way. Why a person is acting in that way. What made him to act in that way in a given social setting, rather than just understanding the whole society at large, which is not possible. So in that sense, it is mostly a reductionist approach that if you understand one individual, perhaps it will percolate to the other individuals, that how one individual has given meaning to a particular action. If you go to the field, be it any topic, your own topic, let us say dreams or attitudes or personality or management or peace and conflict, all your topics, we ask them. We generally, what happens with our conventional way of research is that whenever our students join for MPhil PhD program, once the coursework is over, immediately we says that the supervisor says that where is your schedule? Have you come up with any schedule of your topic? They hurriedly, without doing all this theoretical background, they hurriedly come out with a schedule and they go to the field. What is your sample size? Where is selection of the field? What is your sample size? And what schedule you have constructed, along with the structured or semi-structured or unstructured interviews. Of course, we also add with case studies, sometimes focused group discussions, and social work and economics, they do all these PRA techniques, participatory rapid rural appraisal techniques, RRA techniques and all these things. But behind all these things, the fundamental principle which guides is that what position the social researcher is taking, what ontological position that you have, how do you understand a problem under investigation. This is basically missing in most of the research studies, not only in Sikkim University but everywhere. Mostly, in all the social sciences research which I came across. One of the fundamental difference between Indian social science research and Western social research is basically difference is that methodology. And I must appreciate Dr. Yodida to move this whole idea of this workshop. The more you hone the skills in research methodology, the more we are fine in understanding the problem and interpreting the whole investigation with a suitable explanation. So research methodology is the crux. Everybody does the same thing. They have secondary sources, their problem under some topic we will take. Either the supervisor will give you or you select randomly just for the sake of your MPhil PhD degrees. But the strength lies in Indian social science research, and whenever you submit any paper to any journals abroad, they first look into your methodology. Not the introduction, not the review of literature. Review of literature is there, in your palm it is there. You Google it up, 101 studies will come of your own topic. You just type it, it's a matter of seconds. So many works will come and you cut copy and you say that this is review of literature. But that is also, there is a flaw. How to do review of literature, I think some professors will enlighten you, not simply how to analyze the whole set of review of literature. So methodology is very important. Some researchers, they say that what methodology? Methodology is only half a page. What sample size, what methods we have used, how you analyze the data. More than that, what is methodology, they will ask. It's only one paragraph or two paragraphs. But I think this is the time for you. You are very fortunate to attend this very important and unique workshop that, strengthening your own nuances of this research methodology is that to arrive at a research methodology also you need fundamentally how to approach this whole social problem in different contexts. In that sense, social science research, nature of looking at things are very different with natural sciences. So Weberian concept of is that how to understand the social phenomena or a social reality, not at a collectively but at a reductionist point of view. What makes people to act in such a way and what makes people to react. And he also, Weberian concept says that people do not simply react to the external stimuli. It is not just from a deterministic point of view. There is a rain is coming, you hold up an umbrella, cold is there, you put up warm clothes. It is not as simple as that when the research problem is under investigation. That is a very simple way of doing research in India because for variety of reasons. MPhil is a time-bound program, PhD is a time-bound program, gender issues are there. In the sense, sir, I have a family, I have to complete my PhD, I cannot go into all these theories and all, I want to get a degree. Then for men, sir, I need an MPhil PhD for my job is related to my marriage is related. So there is a chain of events with this MPhil PhD thing. These are all realities one has to accept. And another reality is why people join central universities, MPhil PhD. State universities, there are no takers for PhDs in state universities. Central universities, there is the highest demand for MPhil PhD for obvious reasons. But not the true spirit of inquiry of a particular problem is chosen. So I should not say that why students are, there is a heavy competition for MPhil PhD rather than for master's seats in many central universities. Now the point here is, which I am trying to say is that the whole spirit of social science research is hallmark compared to the natural sciences. Be it literature. Literature is also, again, you take any language, which is again more challenging. The methods are very, very challenging. You would be it history or literature and the other social sciences. So in that sense, when we define knowledge, the social science researcher is basically producing knowledge. So how do you produce knowledge? We say that, findings. What are findings? Findings are nothing but inherently, it is knowledge that you are giving to the entire world. What are again going back to the classical definitions of what is knowledge? One has to ask, what makes knowledge? What is knowledge? What makes knowledge? Types of knowledge, conditions of knowledge, under what conditions knowledge is produced, and lastly, the limitations of knowledge. Is there any limit in our knowing? Not limits of knowledge, but limits of knowing the knowledge. In that sense, one has to go a little below. In that sense, okay, we have this whole classical concept that how do we gain knowledge? What are the avenues of gaining knowledge? Classical philosophers says that sensory perception. Through 5 senses we gain knowledge. When you go to a field, you are studying religion, you are studying a political process or the economy of a society or writer's genre of a particular novel or contemporary issues of your chosen field. More than the sources of how do you gain knowledge? Are there any ways beyond the sensory perception in traditional philosophical inquiry? Whether the knowledge that we gather through sensory perception is valid Again, another question. To what extent the knowledge you have seen, you see something, you touch something, you feel something, you hear something, you taste something, whether is it true knowledge that you gained through senses? This is another philosophical posit that comes to the individual or the researcher. For example, in psychology, one problematic area of psychological research is dream interpretation. When I was doing research on dreams of adolescent boys and girls, early in the morning, we give a paper and pencil to them and ask them, what did you dream last? What was your dream last day? So early in the morning you get up, you have to immediately write, otherwise the dream will fade. So they give stories to me, like 2-3 pages of white papers and all these things. To what extent he is reporting to me is correct or not? This is a fundamentally a basic flaw in psychological research. How do I know? Okay, then there is another step in psychological research comes to this EEG, electroencephalographs. Okay, we put all the 5 lobes on the brain and we ask them to dream, daydream again, not a dream but daydream. The EEG will give you some patterns of waves. Some waves will be there, alpha, beta, gamma rays and all this will come. The psychologist or the researcher only can know the nature of the dream but not content of the dream. Whether it is a horror dream, whether it is a sweet dream, whether it is a very pacified dream or a horror or an excitement or all these things, but we can know only through the wave pattern. But content, who is that heroine in that in your dream? Who is that woman in your dream? Yadav? You will never say to me. You will say, sir, that is personal. I cannot tell you. My dream girl. You will put a dream girl. Then I come out with this research. I publish a 200 pages PhD thesis, The Dreams of Adolescent Boys and Girls in Sikkim. I give a methodology and says that I interviewed 200 girls of this age group in Tadong Degree College, 100 boys from Sikkim University, 100 girls from Sikkim University, and I presented with my dream analysis, 200 pages report is there. Yadav will come to me. Sir, I read these books are very interesting book, but this is all flaw. I don't agree with what you have said. Why? He will ask me, sir, what are the methods of you collected? How did you gather the data? No, I gave this thing, I gave that thing, I collected. I interpreted from Freudian perspective, dream interpretation from Freudian perspective, dream interpretation from some other perspective. Again, I use these words. I bring in these theories here. Freudian theory I bring here. Feminist theory I'll bring here. Some other critical theory I'll bring here. And I will say that, Yadav, see, I have many theories. Sir, that is the problem, sir. You put 100 theories in your thing, this is not lost. So coming back to this, the whole interpretation of the data that which we gathered is problematic in a sense that, in that sense, the question comes is this subjective interpretation can be objective. To what extent this subjective interpretation can be more refined with more methodological tools and apparatus to claim that it is a valid knowledge which I produced. In that sense, in one, if you have sociology students, scholars must be here, Immanuel Durkheim wanted to bring in this whole positivist from in a perspective that a personal act like suicide. Suicide is basically a personal act. For a variety of reasons, people commit suicide. though suicide is a personal act, can sociology explains this personal act in a more statistical and objective way? So he wants to bring sociology a science of a positivist tradition that in terms of trying to come close to physics and mathematics and other pure sciences. So then he gives types of suicides, he gives some numbers to, he quantifies the qualitative data, and he tries to put because it's not like writing a poem. When we say that in literature, that is a problem with literature. Literature doesn't stand for some kind of a scrutiny. An author's novel or a writer, her or his personal views. If somebody is working on one particular novelist or a writer or a dramatist or whatever, to what extent these things are true or correct, because it is my subjective understanding of interpreting the social phenomenon. I look moon in a different way than you look it. A physicist will look moon in a different way than a small child will look, or an old man will look. So given this complexity of layers, how does we bring in this, the nature of social science research in an objective way? Now, Weberian concept of bringing these subjective experiences, he says that perhaps one has to, the researcher looks at the individual's nature of interpretation. So the entire social science research is basically we are interpreting. If somebody asks you, what is social science research? Social science research is nothing but interpretive research. The researcher is interpreting on somebody's behalf. So there is a society, there are people, there is a researcher, and there is an end product. It is not like a, but within the social sciences we have these economics and management, psychology come a little bit more closer in terms of objectification of this whole research inquiry. For example, education you take. Learning experiences, how do you see these learning experiences? Intelligence. I think last week there was a conference, I missed it, on educational psychology. Educational psychology, how do you see? They say measurement. What is measurement? How do you measure? It is only basically we are trying to infer rather than we are measuring certain things. It is not as simple as that body weight, height, weight in physical anthropology we do. And we say that the average height and weight of Sikkimese people is this. Or the different types of blood groups of different communities in Sikkim, they have these blood groups in terms of statistically we put it. So somebody can go and check, okay, whether this is true or not. So this objectivity of what is true, what is not true, comes this whole philosophical domain of inquiry. So coming back to this knowledge and the claims of knowledge. Somebody says that I found it. How did you find what is the process you explained to me? Sir, I saw something. What did you see? Can you show me that? No, it only visible to me. You cannot see. For example, God. You say that I believe in God. Completely subjective. Does God exist? If does exist, where does he exist? No, he is omnipresent. He is in the rocks, he is in the wall, he is there, he is here. How do you prove this? What is the proof of God? No, sir, don't say like that, don't insult my religion. We are not insulting any religion here. You say there is God. I'm asking, does God exist? Yes, he does. She does. If she or he does, where does he exist? Sir, I cannot prove that. You have to experience it. So coming back to Weberian, that okay, I will let me experience it. The philosophical, the spiritual. No, unless you experience, you cannot say. You are an atheist. You are a communist. You don't believe in God. Okay, I don't. It's not the subject matter. We are not judgmental here. But this is the nature of investigation when it comes to studying religion, religious experiences, shamanistic experiences, which are very, very challenging in social sciences, which cannot come close to the nature of inquiry in physical sciences. So Weber gave some kind of direction that, let us go to the actor. Actor will tell you what meanings he has interpreted to a particular social action, be it religion, be it educational process. Then comes the whole approach of phenomenology. Phenomenology talks of the experience, which is very, very critical. The way I experience is different from the way you experience. Why this happens among people in social science research? It is not as simple as yes or no. Experience is more important here. Every individual differs. The same social phenomena, your experiences are different from my experiences. Is it, we belong to the same culture, we belong to the same group, our socialization process is same, but still then, why do we have these different experiences? So in that sense, Alfred Shoes, a great phenomenologist, explains that social reality is chaotic. Social reality is completely disordered. Social reality is completely abstract. The whole world cannot be come to one single reductionist point, but it is the individual, the agent, the man who makes the social reality into an order. Because everywhere it is chaos. Chaos not in the sense of conflict, not in the sense of people are fighting. How do you schematize the whole things in this nature of the world? How do we put these schemas into our cognitive process? That is more important from a phenomenological perspective. And how do we get it? And what we are doing in social science research, we are trying to tap these schemas of people from a phenomenological perspective. To understand a particular thing, so how did you feel? What do you mean by how did you feel? That means the experience that one has gone through is giving to the researcher. Okay, you tell me, even for example, attitudes. I'll come to political science. Do you like Narendra Modi? First question. I'm taking a survey among Sikkimese people in Gangtok. My sample is 500 people. I want to see how many people like Narendra Modi's governance. Yes or no? First question I'll ask, my close friend Yadav is here. My schedule, first question, because he contested against Narendra Modi. Most of you do not know that. The most challenging aspect which I like him. He filed his nomination papers. How much guts you have to file against Narendra Modi? Please give a big hand to Mr. Yadav here.
How much vote you got?
202.
I see 202 votes.
202, sir.
Congratulations. You have a very good vote base. The point which I am driving is that if Yadav say yes or no, what makes him to say yes or no? Attitudes, political surveys, economic surveys based on, are including marketing surveys. In management they do, in marketing they do, and all these things. It is based on your experience. What you feel, how do you see a particular phenomena, which you ascribe, you give meanings to, attach to, and you interpret in your own way. And again, taking these things, we come back and says that, this is what we did. This is what we gave to these things. So phenomenology tries to see, and again, we have to also look into Immanuel Kant's work, a thing in itself. You cannot understand a stone. A thing in itself. A priori assumptions. That means, how do you understand some other's culture which is not your own culture? We are doing simply, some kind of a research. Some people question me when I go and present papers in outside Gangtok. I present on Bhutia, I present on lecture, I present on Limbu, Tamang, all these things. The first fundamental question they ask, sir, do you speak Nepali? I say. Then without knowing Nepali, how did you collect data? Second question. Then again, okay. To what extent it is valid that they told you the correct things again? So how do you, explain these things? It is not like a statistical table. I am saying that, see, look at the table, then there will be no questions at all. I do central tendency, I do a frequency distribution, I do a t-test, I do a chi-square, no one will question because my table speaks 101 things to you. No questions at all. A statistical table is there here. I'll come back to statistical table also. But these things, the nature of investigation which we come across and we present these things which are very challenging. So now the question comes is this reflexivity process. Where do the researcher stands? What ontological position the researcher has taken? The ontological position of the structure, the ontological position of the agency. Structure the whole society or the phenomena, and in that structure, where does this individual stand? This is very important, the ontological position. This is what I suppose, for example, feminist research. Feminists inherently question what we call is also called the critical ethnography. Tomorrow, I think if possible, I'll speak on ethnography also. Where do you stand? How do you, a male researcher, trying to understand women's emancipation or women's empowerment process in a given particular society, in sociology, in anthropology, in political science, in history, whatever. So the question comes here, what is your ontological position? Do you support the feminist theoretical assumption that women, or the position of women in particular society is like this, like this, like this? And what is your understanding of this position? As a male member, how do you understand women's lived experiences? How do you question that? How do you answer that? So your research is, if I say that, oh, I give status of women, because you see many papers in social science research, the status of women in Meghalaya society, the status of women in Kasi, the status of Bhutia women in Sikkim society, an empirical study by some Srinivas. I see many papers, status of Bhutia women in Sikkim society by Srinivas. This fellow Srinivas is from South India. He cannot speak Hindi also. Forget about Nepali. Double all kinds of flaws in his research. And if you look at the paper, he says, Bhutia women, this thing, that thing, Bhutia women are like this, Bhutia women are like Bhutia. Okay, now if somebody asks critically, sir, may I know, do you think that really the subjects or the informants or the people or the individuals did really speak the truth to you? How do you establish the truth? Research is what is basically research. We are coming to a truth. You are saying this is true truth. This is not untrue. Nobody should question your research. If I question your research means it is not, it's all false. I can challenge. But you are saying that this is an established truth. 2 into 2 is equal to 4, that is truth. Where whatever means you arrive it. Whether you count 1 by 1, 1 or you multiply 2 into 2, it is truth. But if I say that the status of Bhutia woman in Sikkim, the status of Limbu woman in, or a comparative study of Bhutia, Lepcha, Tamang woman, a situational study. But now fundamental question is that what position you have taken as a researcher? Where is the reflexivity process? Then comes again, another issue is that, okay, questions comes that I am from a different culture, I am from a different social group, I carry a cultural baggage, I carry my own assumptions, I carry my own value-laden issues of another particular. There lies the problem of phenomenology. How do you arrive or how do you know others' experiences? And okay, if they report to you, to what extent it is true or valid that they give it to you? For example, I am taking a survey. The smoking and drinking habits of adolescent boys and girls in Sikkim. I go with the questionnaire. I go to college and I ask, do you smoke? Yes or no? Internal validity problems comes. To give a very good image to me, no, what does it look like? What are you talking about? No, smoking. No, I don't know. Okay, no. Girls, all no. Boys, some yes, some no. And I present this data. And I come out, I publish. In Gangtok, all the adolescent boys and girls, 90% of the girls do not smoke, or 100% girls do not smoke. 10% of the boys here and there, this is my study, this is truth. It lacks internal validity. I say no to you, but I go inside and I have my own brand. Alcohol also, alcoholism. Somebody, when he says that, alcoholism in Sikkim, oh, blah, blah, blah. How do you establish? Who will tell domestic violence? Do you all wives will tell that they are beating their husbands? So, which is a basic flaw. I ask many husbands, sir, how does your wife do? No, very good, very good. How do you know internally how much you are suffering? The same case with husband and wife. Does your husband, very well, he is like Lord Rama, he is very like, he never look at other women, he looks at you. How lecherous he is, how do you know? We do not know. But how do you expect these things and all? Then I write a book on that. Ideal types of marriage and ideal types of family relations or gender relations in Sikkim. These are very problematic areas of inquiry in social science research. And that is why we don't stand for objectivity. There lies, but these issues are also can be studied subjectively, though there is nature in subjectivity, but how to arrive is objectivity is the methods, the tools, and the approach that you have taken, which gives you more objectivity. I'm not saying 100% objectivity we arrive, but we can still claim and we can stand on and say that, see, look at the position I have taken. Look at the reflexivity process I have taken. How I arrived at this data. Look at the methods that I have used. Look at the array of things that I have used. For example, when you study your own community, I want to study my own community, which is often people do not do that, which we call it as an autoethnography. So there is again the problem arises. When you study your own community, either you paint your community completely rosy or you paint mixed way, or because you don't want to show your community to the entire world that this community has these things. So this comes a reflexivity process. The way you are being observed, the way the data has been gathered, and how it reflects on the nature of data. Hermeneutics comes here. Meanings are all there. Hermeneutics says that all meanings are there. When meanings are there, how to get those meanings? An individual, the society, we have these meanings with me. So it is the social scientist in methodological process. So I am stressing you once again, the rigor is very important here. Please take it very seriously. Don't take it for the sake of MPhil, PhD or your postdoctoral things, but for the sake of research. Don't look it in that way. Try to look at every possible way to what extent I can bring in more valid data. The more data I get, the more validity I can claim. And of course, reliability also falls in. Because one thing, because that is the problem with social science, like in compared with the medical research. Suppose if I invent a drug, I invent a medicine, I give it to someone, the patient died. So that shows that this drug is not working. I do not need to keep on repeating the drug with many people. One person died. Should I again go and test it another person? Another person also died. Again I go with another person. I should not increase my sample. I will be in jail. He says that, sir, you are a good doctor, but why you discovered you invented or discovered a drug. It's failed on one person. Second person you have failed. Why you want to go third, fourth, fifth? Why you are increasing the sample? That's flaw there. So one sample is enough in medical research. Two sample, but one sample you cannot say that Yadav likes Modi, Modi, everybody likes Modi. Can I say like that, Yadav?
Yes.
One sample, you are only my sample.
Yeah. As the Prime Minister, you can say, sir.
Yadav implies that son from Modi.
He is my only sample. My research is wrong. Sir, how can you rely on Yadav? He says that Yadav says that he likes Narendra Modi governance. Your study is inconclusive. His experience is, I don't want only his experience. I want all, the more experiences I gather, the more validity I can claim with my own research findings. You take any, even marketing, consumerism, or even in economics, or the production, or the sales, or whatever you take, the sample size varies from, the domain of inquiry. In that sense, I think the real challenge comes, but again now comes within social sciences also. There are some very good studies, classical studies in linguistics. I came across many studies. Only one woman, an entire book. One of my colleagues in Utah University, she wrote only on one old woman where Quechua language is being fading. In that sense, again, it is very valid. So you cannot say that how can you take only one sample, one woman there? Because the experiences again been lost. You have to record immediately. If the old woman dies, means everything gone. That language is dead. So in that sense, what process, what ontological position that you have taken, we will define in the methodology. Why only single women, or why only two families? So that rationalization you have to build up in the methodological procedure. So in that sense, I must say that Indian social research seriously lacks this methodological rigor, and our papers are not even considered. Forget about language. They say that of course we are not good in English language in writing, but that is an excuse. But they will try to forgive your ways of putting the words and all this grammar and all. But methodology is very important. They look first to the methodology, then comes the language. Language can put this word or that word, that is not the issue here. How did you collect a folk tale? How did you collect a myth? Or how did you collect the schooling process in education? Very, very important in education. How does the child experience the whole learning process? How parents look at, how community looks at, how the entire language acquisition is taken, or how knowledge has been attained. Knowledge attainment by the student is, the ways and process is very important in educational research. So in that sense, this reflexivity process, where does the researcher stand? What theoretical position you have taken? For example, if I take a Marxist position, let's say I have a sound or a profound fascination towards Marxist. I'm a Marxist, let us say. So I go with this assumption that inequalities exist. This is my standpoint, if I'm a Marxist. With this, I'm going into the society. If I'm a Marxist, I go with the societies that this society is crippled with these inequalities, then naturally I look at the society with inequalities only. I never come out of this paradigm. Or if I take a feminist ontological position, it says that women's choice or women's agency has been restricted by certain structural features of the society. The agency has been limited. Women's agency, women's experiences has been, there are no experiences at all. For example, I don't want to particular point out some communities in the world, some religious groups which never allow, they don't consider as a human being. So if I go with a Marxist, then I come out, I says that this is basically structurally, there is a gap between these genders. And I go with that research. So there lies the starting point of my inquiry. So in that aspect, the whole phenomenology comes and followed by reflexivity, which comes these two things together. Then obviously these problems of subjectivity and objectivity in social science research. Can a social science researcher, to what extent we come out with our own value systems, our own cultural baggage that we bring in when we study other culture? Can we go with a completely neutral mind, drop off everything, but still that will haunt you? An American coming to study Indian culture, or all these cultural things, religious identity, this whole identity problems comes in when we are inquiring into we go with that authoritarian thing into the research field. I give you some examples of how this happens. One research scholar in one state university, her supervisor happens to be the vice chancellor. In the course he became. So she took a car, an ambassador car, because Vice State University has an ambassador car. She took that driver ambassador car into a fishing village and threatened the whole informants there. Vice Chancellor has sent me to collect data on you. She did not say that I am a PhD scholar, I am from this university, my research topic is that. Naturally all the fishing villages, they are innocent people. Oh, okay madam, tell me madam, what do you want? No, I want to study all your blood groups. Give all your blood to me. And that's a sensitive issue. How can you, Vice Chancellor has sent to me. See, the position she took. Yeah. She took a position, she did not go with the researcher's identity. There is no rapport establishment. In classical sociological, anthropological, psychological studies or political, there needs to be a rapport. I am so and so, I am so. There is no pleasantries. There are no, you are not interested. She did not say anything. Vice Chancellor sent to me one ambassador card. Look at the authoritarian, look at the hegemonic way of coming into the field. Naturally they donated, but why you are collecting the, for what you are collecting the data? So these principles of, whether you call it as to what extent this is ethical, to what extent this is, the way you collect the data, the position you took. You are threatening mode. People, if in first instance, they will tell something. In second instance, they will tell something. In third instance, they will tell something. In fourth instance, they will give you some other thing. For example, income. In economics, if you go and do a survey, I challenge you, people will never tell how much monthly you are getting. Then they will ask you, sir, how much do I get, sir? You tell me, sir. I am doing this job. You tell me how much I am getting. How do I know how much you are getting? Sir, as a laborer, how much I get, sir? You tell me. Bataiye, sir. They will never tell the real. Debts. But debts they will tell. Sir, do you have any loans in your... Yes, sir, I have so many loans, sir. This loan, that loan, that loan. You create the loan structure when you are putting a family income in that.
Many times we are observing income and expenditure. They are not giving exactly.
Why?
They have source of income, but they are not telling. Actually we are observing that income and expenditure according to their resource, and that's how now it's going now. And if people will give their exact data, if they will think that we are genuinely come to present their problems or issues to government, then I think they will give the exact data. But they are thinking that we are going to submit to government their high income status, So therefore, which they are going to lose their BPL card or whatever the facility is providing by the government. They are thinking like this.
Depends on the purpose. If it is a marriage proposal, they will say we have so much of assets, income and everything.
For marriage proposal,
Yeah.
so much of assets.
Yeah, they say.
By girl side or boy side?
Both
It
sides.
can be any both.
Ah.
To show that we are somebody or something, we are in high status, they may.
I partly disagree. If the girl side says that, sir, we have so much money, that fellow will ask more dowry.
Then it depends.
No, sir.
No.
This is depend on
South
society.
Indian is very, huh?
No, sir. In our place, na, this is part of prestige, no, sir. कि हम इतने धनी हैं.
Then he will bring some loans, I think.
No, sir.
इतना मेरा पास इतना धनी है means he will bring loan.
Yeah, whatever, sir. But you can show that, na. They can show it like that.
But I assume you will get more dowry because
No,
you are PhD from Sikkim University. Your value is very high. Assistant professor, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you will run into lakhs, I think. Well,
Not lakhs, crores.
He's waiting for when economic crisis will stop. Then he will ready.
But sir, there are so many households exactly they don't have the more than 10,000 annual income. I have collected the tribal people. Those who have only 6,000 around 8,000 annual income in Odisha. They are still not suffering. They don't have any income. They don't have any source of income. Their agricultural land is very limited.
True, I agree with you.
But so many NGO and projects, they are going to collect the data and they are monitoring their income and expenditure. It's wrong way.
No, NGOs, they hijack so many things. I'll come, we can discuss later. The role of NGOs in the whole developmental process, that is another strand of debate, whether to what extent NGOs really projecting, or the journalistic way of projecting all the marginalized people, you call it as tribal groups or scheduled caste people or minorities, religious, linguistic, whatnot. Journalistic way of reporting, NGO reporting and social science reporting, true social science research, there lies our rigor. NGOs, they simply do a survey. They have no technique at all. Just go there, how many people are there, what is your income, all blah blah. But social science research, it takes all these positions because it's a long-term intensive research process. It is a 6 months, 8 months project. It is not a time-bound project in that sense. And the apparatus that we use, for example, the question that you come to me, income levels people will never tell in the first instance. How many wives you have, people will never tell you. How many husbands you have, they will tell you, no, I'm telling you, they will tell you if they have confidence in you. The researcher has to, a social science researcher, has to establish a complete confidentiality. How do you establish confidentiality? They should trust you. Okay, if I tell for this thing, to what extent this information is not leaked.
Yeah.
There lies the whole rapport process. If you go with a car and you threaten them, obviously they will not tell anything. They will not allow you to inside their houses. They will not share your food. They will say, no, all these things. So in that sense, so anthropological fieldwork methods which it equips with you to how to get the more closer, the more, I could not say accurate, to closer to the accurate data. The same problem we had years ago, income levels. First instance, they never tell. How many things, hey, you say 3,000 rupees per month your income, and how do you have a color TV? Sir, this color TV somebody has gifted us. You have a fridge, this is not ours, sir. Somebody has put it here. They have all answers for you. You have a bike in front of your house. No, mera bike was some other's bikes, sir. They parked here and they went off. It is not our bike. First instance they will, second instance, third instance you go to their home, fourth instance you go to them. So there lies what I am trying to say, phenomenological is this identification process. The bonding process is very important at an experiential level. How do you identify yourself and how the researched identify with the researcher? Because the moment you go, you are an outsider. Though at what level that they should be, you are an insider. I'll tell you in one famous anthropologist, his name is Richard King. He's a US anthropologist. He was studying on the Central African community. After his 3 years of his research, his ethnographic work, the entire community made him as a chief of their own community. A white man becoming a chief to a black community in Central Africa. Can you imagine what kind of trust they have? Then they made the chief of their own society. You know, that means how much you involve, the researcher involves with the given, because this is a dyadic relationship. How do you establish this dyadic relationship between the subject to be known and you are an object? So the subject-object relationship, which comes deeply under scrutiny in terms of reflexivity process at a philosophical level, or the epistemological position that you have taken. You are not anything. I don't carry any label with me. I enter into the field. I collect the data. But of course, now superficial data and all these things, we simply say that, sir, excuse me, do you have 5 minutes time? I'm doing a marketing research survey. What products you like? Do you like this? Why are you not protecting? Okay, at one level, this is only some kind of a survey level. But when you do an intensive, in-depth study, there lies the, you know, how do you establish the researcher and the subject relationship. Income also they will tell you, sir, but not in the first instance. You to have a, you know, a longer period of stay, second time, third time you go, then slowly they will reveal. Sir, you know, we are getting 10,000 rupees, sir, there is another source of income, there is a, but despite all these things, but still we have a problem. You know, our children's debt is there, that's why I did not tell you in the beginning. We suspect, for example, bank loans. How much bank loan you have, why are you not, they'll tell all these things. Because they suspect you. As my friend is saying that you will not receive the tokens from the government. In future, that will curtail your privileges from the government. Or the BPL cards or the white cards, though you are you know, at a higher income group, but you still conceal the facts, be it income, be it other things. But all these things, you know, follow a pattern that, you know, kinds of things. In that sense, what this point of razor sharp social science researcher is that, see, our laboratory is society. We don't have any specific laboratory. If somebody asks you what is the whole universe is our study of you know, under investigation. And if you have a you know, a kind of that, it is, one should not think in that way that I am going to study. You should change the attitude, I am going to learn from this, either from, for example, an educationist trying to understand the schooling process or the learning process or the teacher student teaching learning process in education or in anything, in informal economics or anything. One should not go with this idea that I want to study them. But rather, if you have you know, ingrained feeling that let me go and learn from them. Learning comes that you are accepting objectively. Once you objectively, you know, open to all these things, whatever it comes in the field, then the corpus of data is enormous. To the maximum truth, they will tell you all the, you know, aspects of you know, their social life, their social processes, which be it religion, be it economy, be it political organization, be it you know, kinship behavior, be it gender relations, be it even reproductive health behavior. For example, in anthropology, in psychology, we study this reproductive health behavior. How do you, the married couples in terms of children and all this, nobody will tell. They'll simply satisfy you with the plain answers in terms of reproductive behavior, because it's very personal. It is something which is very close to you and nobody wants to know your personal behavior. But there lies the researcher's wisdom, what I call. And how do you get this wisdom? By looking it into the kind of various research processes that takes place, starting from selecting the topic, the design that you take, the hypothesis that you frame, if it requires. Not all topics requires hypothesis. And the methods that you have chosen, and the time that you have spent to collect the data, and lastly, how do you interpret? Interpretation is also very important. Not simply collecting data. Interpretation also requires the kind of position that you have taken, the theoretical position, and the kind of epistemological stance that you give direction to the truth that you are going to establish in your research findings. So in that sense, I would like to reiterate that, the grounding is more important. What Yodida was telling me in the morning, that grounded theory. Grounded theory is basically epistemologically grounded again with individuals' experiences. That is more important rather than the researcher's experience. It is not my experience with the people, but the respondent's experience per se that I have to interpret in the given social context or in the political, historical context. So we need to, revisit these philosophical foundations, that what background that I have chosen, what aspect that I am looking into, whether I am really capable of taking this project, what limitations that I have from gender point of view, from political point of view, from the kind of identity that you carry. You have your own identities, but that should not intervene your understanding of particular things into other things. Because I have an experience, a true Christian, a Mormon, as basically he's not a recent cult, he's a Mormon Christian. He wanted to study Muslims in Visakhapatnam city, in my city. So naturally there is two identity, because two subjective experiences, two established faiths. You have a faith that the whole human creation has been created by so and so, by your own God, and they have their own interpretations of creative. But that doesn't, then immediately one epistemological question I asked the professor. Professor, you are a true believer, you are a true Christian by spirit and by action. So how do you enter into an Islamic world? Whether your spiritual, whether your position will not transect the other, how do you understand? Because you already have you have an opinion of the other community. You have some kind of an understanding that Muslims are like this, Muslim is like this, they have these things. So how do you go about understand this phenomena, which is very challenging? It's not like physics. It is not like height and weight measurement of these Islamic people. You are trying to understand their lived experiences. So how do you drop these things and how do you enter into that? There lies these problems, which also happens in our classroom teaching, especially in anthropology. In anthropology, we teach human evolution. Human evolution, we say that because this is basically fundamentally philosophical a conundrum. In that sense, Darwin's theory we teach. We teach Darwin's theory that single cell organisms, we have multicellular organisms. There is primate evolution from lower organisms to higher organisms. We are like this. This is science. But you have your own religion, you go to church, you go to some Bhagavan, you have some other text, which explains origin of universe from a different perspective. So by faith you have one book you are following. And in the classroom you are teaching something. Which one is correct? Somebody asked me. Whether the origin of man from Adam and Eve is correct or Darwin's theory is correct. Which one is correct?
Both, sir.
Modiji is saying both. This is the beauty of social sciences. There now I conclude my presentation. Yes, both are correct. Every theory is correct in its own way. Every perspective tries to establish the truth, interpret with its own logical positioning. Because when we say what is theory or what is a model, there is a logical interconnectivity between one assumption to another assumption. As Yadav is saying that biblical explanation or Hindu explanation or Islamic explanation of human variation or humankind or origin of cosmosis or origin of universe or Buddhist perspective of origin of universe. But that is why Lord Buddha is very, very clever. He knew the philosophical problems of this universe. Somebody asked Lord Buddha, sir, what is the origin of universe? He did not answer. Why you are bothered of origin of universe? What is the current problem that you have? Sir, I am having a problem with my wife. That we will deal, not the origin of universe. He did not touch those things. So fundamentally, in that sense, contextually, if I bring back this Buddhistic explanation, contextually, not at these, at a more abstract level, that which you cannot, we have to explain in different models and different theoretical perspectives. What is, in that sense, is that, social science is not weak in its theories. The more perspectives we have, the more theories we have, the more stronger that we have. We may not have one Newton's law like physics, or we may not end up with one Avogadro's number, that the gold number, that's it. No. The more dimensions, the more approaches that you have one social phenomena, because the complexity of the social phenomena is like that. Because there is human agency. Human agency is very dynamic. Human agency is multi-layered and highly complex. And how do we do that? Because the cognitive process that is taking place in the brain, one cannot know unless the actor himself. And the social scientist is simply bringing these experiences out, and we are interpreting into some kind of an explanation which is also stands valid. In that sense, social science research is not, of course it is open for scrutiny, it is open for critique, it is open for more explanations, but that doesn't mean that our research is waste. Social science research does not stand for reliability, validity, all these things are there, but still, we need an approach, we need some understanding. If not, there is no understanding. What time is it? So let's stop here.